Every day is a missing. Sometimes I feel like I'm trapped in because of my emotions. I can't seem to control them. Every day is a missing. Sometimes I feel like I'm trapped in my emotions. I can't seem to control them. My emotions. My emotions. My emotions, my emotions, my emotions, my emotions, my emotions, my emotions.
Yo, what's good friends? It's Sax coming to you with a build video. Today we're going to be looking at my brand new Nerf bait build. This is a Stabbomancer Spellshot build. Takes great advantage of the brand new DLC 2 gear. Really cool mechanical shit going on. I really hope you enjoy. If you do, please do not hesitate to hit like, maybe even click subscribe down below. It really helps out me as a new YouTube creator. Greatly appreciate you regardless. And if you want to get into fun, I want to make sure that you know we do stream 4 days a week at twitch.tv/H4XZZHD, link down below. We're giving away builds like this where we're having a great time. So if this is something you feel like you want to enjoy and you want to be more involved in the community, please do not hesitate to check us out, and I hope to see you there. But nevertheless, without further ado, let me stop wasting your time and let's get into the build. Alright friends, so let's look at this skill tree. Starting off with the Stabbomancer, you'll notice we're running From the Shadows. Now, it's unfortunate From the Shadows gives us a 25% debuff to critical hit, but we are getting constant critical hits, which is going to factor into a lot of the other moving parts of the build, so you'll come to see later on why that is so fucking incredible. Also, we have other things going on that give us a buff to action skill cooldown and duration. You really want to stay in From the Shadows as much as humanly possible, so please pick this up as your action skill. Next, we're going to look at Arsenal. This is pretty much across the board, 15% into all things we care about: melee damage, spell damage, and gun damage. Melee damage, not as important, useful, but not super critical. Spell damage and gun damage are really awesome for this build. A 50% is a nice clean bonus, so we're going to stick with 5 points here. Now we're going to put 1 point into haste. Now, one thing I want to advise you against, do not put 3 points into haste. Haste and swift death do have this weird interaction where they sort of cancel each other out. So you really don't want to put more than 1 point into haste. We really want to put 5 points into swift death because we're getting that bonus for speed. Again, when you put points into haste, even though it looks like it's going to work really well together, there is that weird canceling thing going on right now. I don't know if that's a bug or what, but you want to avoid putting too many points into haste. So we're going to put 1 into haste and then subsequently 5 into swift death. We're putting 3 into potent poisons and respectively 3 into exploit their weaknesses. This build does use soaked, so we are going to be using status effect in terms of frost and lightning. So we want to go ahead and get a little bit of bonuses there. We also want to be able to move down the tree. So having points here doesn't do anything but help accentuate our damage a little bit and give us that little bit of edge that helps us move forward. We're putting a point into elusive. We do like to be able to run and shoot at the same time. It just gives us a little bit more mobility. Works nicely here with haste. I like to move a lot. I'm a Zane player from BL3, Zane and Flag, so I really do like that extra speed. So having that extra speed here is really nice. And that pretty much does it for the Stabbomancer tree. So moving on to the Spellshot tree, we've got 3 points into magic bullets. Now, we do have, alright, When it comes to spell damage, we do have some things going on to give us a little bit of a buff, and we do want that buff to gun damage for that, again, extra nudge. So we're just putting 3 points here, so we're getting 45% of our spell damage bonus to our gun damage. Not a bad skill to have. There's really nothing else in this first tier that we want. Prestidigitation, it's okay. I really debated between these two to think about what would really benefit the build, and I figured that reload speed, since we're getting enhanced fire rate from things like just warming up, reload speed would be the best way to go, so that's the way we went. Speaking of just warming up, we're getting 3.2% bonus fire rate for stacks of spell weaving. We're constantly getting stacks of spell weaving because of the spell that we're using and because of the way we run this build. So this is a stackable, useful bonus here. Really helps the build out. So we're putting 4 points there. We're putting a point into mage armor. We're using an amp shield here, so any opportunity I have to restore my ward so that when I shoot and I use that amp and it pulls the ward back, it's constantly pushing that ward forward. It's just really helpful, in my opinion, to have a way to constantly regenerate the ward, so you're mitigating some of that amp debuff. We are putting 5 points into Font of Mana, and the reason being is because we're using our spells constantly, and again, we want to stay in From the Shadows as much as possible, so having cooldown in both of these regards is an excellent benefit to the build, so I strongly recommend putting 5 points here. Moving down, we've got 5 points into Imbued Weapon. Alright, now again, we're casting a recastable spell that already has 4 charges built in, so you're spell casting with this build constantly. Alright, not to mention this also stacks, so you're getting bonus damage based off of how often you're using your spell, and in this build that's quite frequently. So having a 10% bonus damage stackable is really nice, so we put 5 points here. We put a point into high thread count because it's a spell shot build. Why would you not? Extra spell weaving stacks, most excellent. The more spell weaving stacks, the higher my buffs get from other skills in the build, so we're going to go a point there. We also have a point into 1 slot, 1 kill because this is a gun damage centric build and we are trying to get as many stacks of spell weaving as possible, so having that extra 4% per stack really helps. So 1 point here is a no-brainer. Now we've got 3 from the class mod, but we're also putting 3 into Double Knot. I'm pretty sure everybody understands how Double Knot works at this point if you're playing Spellshot, but in the case that you don't, alright, we're getting constant critical hits. We're in From the Shadows all the time. We're playing a Stabbomancer. So when I get a critical hit with a spell, which by the by does work with From the Shadows. So if I'm sitting there casting spells, critical hit chance is already through the roof with this build. From the Shadows makes it even more effective. So we're constantly casting spells, constantly getting critical hits. We're getting bonus lightning damage from our spell to our gun. This build using Soak really benefits from lightning damage, so this is a no-brainer. Having 6 is a really big benefit. We've already talked about 1 slot, 1 kill, so Sever the Thread. Now, I was really on the fence about this. I didn't know if I wanted this in the build or not, but we are getting constant critical hits, so having infinite well, I don't want to say infinite, but basically infinite cooldown on our spells allows us to constantly be casting our spells, which again is going to benefit in many other areas of the build. So I felt like with 1 point left over, why not go ahead and throw it into Sever the Thread. Alright, so that essentially covers both of the skill trees. So with that being said, let's move into the weapons. Alright friends, so let's look at the gear for this bad boy. First things first, Masterwork Handbow. If y'all are familiar with Stabbomancer and From the Shadows, then this needs no introduction, but basically the reason this is here is when you're using From the Shadows and you throw on the Masterwork Handbow and you're popping crits constantly, which you will because From the Shadows, you're ricocheting consistently and you're regenerating ammo. So this thing goes from pew pew to pew 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 pew, and it's killing everything in the arena. It's a really nasty weapon to have, again, especially in From the Shadows, so I'd be remiss not to put it here. Now, if you're not in From the Shadows, we have the Riveter. The Riveter is like the little brother, so to speak, for the handbow. It's got a decent mag size. It's got some pretty serious punch behind it. You can float around the whole arena, plug enemies in the head, get really easy criticals, do some serious damage. Again, if you do not have From the Shadows ready, or you're going for more of a mobbing approach rather than a single target, this is going to be your alternative to the Masterwork Handbow. Now, the Encapsulator is an interesting addition. The Encapsulator is often overlooked. It's a fairly underrated purple weapon. I don't feel like a lot of people really appreciate it. The reason we have it here, as you'll see in a moment, is that anything that has a sticky secondary fire is of benefit to this build, and the Encapsulator has just that. So this is a good mobbing weapon. It can be a decent single target weapon if you switch it over to sticky and you're using it in combo with the Bolt Lash and with the Baba, which we're going to talk about here in a minute. But this is a good all-around sort of multi-purpose tool. There's a lot of other options in the build, as you'll see here. There's a 15-item backpack full of some extra things. If you want to swap it out, feel free. But this is just, again, a good multi-purpose tool. I use it for a variety of things, so I wanted to make sure I included it here. Now, one thing I will say about the Masterwork, the Riveter, and the Encapsulator is that they are great mobbing weapons. They're not necessarily your best bossing options. I mean, the Masterwork does have, From the Shadows, some good bossing potential, but it has nothing on the Sword Explosion. The recent update to the Sword Explosion, especially with regards to the ×3, it does a fuck ton of damage, and with Sticky and with some of the other setups we have going on in this build, it's just an absolute go-to for bossing. It's something you definitely want to have. In fact, we run the Cryo as a mainstay here in the build, but we also have, in the same backpack with the drop, we have the Corrosive, the Fire, and the Lightning. So all three. This is just, again, a go-to bossing weapon. You've probably seen it in the footage earlier. As far as melting bosses goes, this is what you want to use. Hop in, pop your fucking From the Shadows, throw a couple of Bolt Lashes to get your on-spell cast bonuses, go to town with the Sword Explosion, end all be all. Now, I know you can't see it because my ugly face cam overlay and shit's in the way, but we are using a full battery here. There's a few reasons for that. One, we have some things going on with Amp where when we shoot, we do lose some of the ward because of Amp, but we also have skills in our skill tree, like I mentioned before, that are giving us ward charge back. So we're getting the bonus damage at the expense of ward, but then we're getting ward. It's doing a lot, but the main thing is the lightning charge. We are running a soaked build, so that lightning charge is giving us bonus damage, and it does hit really fucking hard. It's not quite Catatumbo level hitting hard, but it's fucking strong. So I definitely recommend you putting around with the battery. There are, of course, other shields you can use, the Wit, etc., if you so choose, but we run, personally speaking, the battery. Now, like I mentioned, we're running a soak build, so we're running a Tides here. Now, we aren't running the Ambihextress, the two-handed spell bit with Spellshot because we want to run From the Shadows. So we are only running one spell, which means we need to get our soak from somewhere, and here it is. You'll notice it's got a +3 in a very certain particular skill that I know a lot of you are fond of, and it's got +2 in 1,000 cuts. This particular one has area damage, all damage dealt, and gun critical hit chance. Really, really solid option. You would be surprised when you're running Stabbo how easy it is to get critical hits, and subsequently how easy it is to get the soak modifier. It does count as a status effect, which works with a lot of the other things we've talked about so far. Just really, 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 really cool to get that bonus damage. Also really, really cool to have the bonus points and the perks that we've got on this particular roll. So for those reasons, we're running these Tides here. Now, I can't even see myself. Alright, so we are running 2 championship rings. Action skill cooldown and action skill duration are on both because, again, From the Shadows is imperative. The quicker I can get it back, the longer I can stay in it. That's what we're after. So we've got those on both, but the only difference between the two is that we have pistol crit on one and assault rifle crit on the other. You really don't need any bonus damage on the Sword Explosion. It's going to do what it's going to do regardless. You don't really even have to mess with it. It's like an Instapot. You just leave it there and let it go. But with the Encapsulator and the Masterwork / Riveter, it's nice to have the pistol AR bonus, so we really focused on those and kind of let the Sword Explosion do its thing. But again, the real name of the game here is action skill cooldown and action skill duration. That's really what we're after, so that's why you'll see those on. Now, the Bolt Lash. This is new, and I want to go ahead and say, because I know a lot of people are probably going to be like, well, the Bolt Lash, Now, before we even go down this rabbit hole, yes, I understand that we're still in week 1 of DLC 2. However, before anybody gets crazy about it, I want to let you know that if you turn your console or computer offline, like you deactivate your network connection, and you go into DLC 2 and you run it, the game will allow you to go through all 4 tiers of the DLC prior to them being officially released. So are they officially released? And not really. But can you get them with very, very minimal effort? Yes. So again, if this is something you're interested in and you want to farm these for yourself, turn your console or your computer offline, disable your network connection, go into the DLC, you'll be able to toggle through all 4 difficulty levels at your leisure. But the Bolt Lash is really interesting because the Bolt Lash, basically, in a nutshell, it's a 4-charge, 5-cast, repeated cast spell. So you can sit there and go whap, 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 recharge, whap, 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 whap. And with 4 charges, you can do this constantly. Now, when you hit an enemy 3 times with these arrows that come from the Bolt Lash, it ricochets. If you see my pattern here, ricochets across all over the place and does damage to other enemies. So aside from continuing the ricochet theme and aside from giving you all of that goodness, it is also helping you getting your stacks of spell weaving. It's also helping you in terms of your on spell cast anointments, which you'll see through here. We didn't touch on these, but there's on action skill start, increased damage, of course, because of fucking From the Shadows. There's action skill active frost damage from the Shadows again. Spellcast because we're using Bolt Lash. Excuse me, lightning damage by 30%. And spellcast elemental damage by 20%. You're just getting the memo here that there's a lot of stuff in this build that sort of coincides with each other. That a lot of these things are giving you buffs to other things. So when we talk about the Bolt Lash, a lot of what we're getting here is the multi-cast bonus. Like, we're casting it constantly, we're getting the constant ricochet, we're getting the bonuses based off of our class and based off of our gear. It's just all around a good option. There is, I believe, a tiebreaker in here if you really wanted to go like the Super Soaker route and just be like, oh, I'm gonna have a Tides and a tiebreaker, or if you wanted to run Ambihextrous, you could do that too. But I personally find that the Bolt Lash is more than sufficient. This is what you'll see me using in a lot of the introductory clips for this video. We'll go in and we'll Bolt Lash, Bolt Lash, Bolt Lash, Bolt Lash, Bolt Lash, and then unload with the Sword Explosion. Again, we're proccing all of the spellcast bits, we're getting the spell weaving bonuses, and then we're going to town. So the Bolt Lash, little bit of a new piece of gear. Maybe some people aren't familiar with it, but it is a fantastic option. I strongly recommend you give it a try. The Barbalode, the cornerstone of this build. Alright, the Barbalode is interesting in that it's buffed. As of right now, there are some issues where if you're playing in the same arena consistently and you're using it, you'll hear the triggers, you'll see it activate, but then it won't do what it's supposed to do. Now, you can leave the arena and, for lack of a better way to put it, re-trigger it. You can throw it on the ground, unequip it, pick it back up, and it'll reset. There are some bugs with it. Hopefully when they fix it, they don't change how it works. But the reason this is so beautiful is because if you are using a crossbolt, any sort of crossbolt weapon, and you're shooting enemies consistently, you're getting ricochets constantly. This thing is a ricochet machine. It also works with saw blades, and it also works with TNT stickies. So back to the Sword Explosion, if you really wanted to, you pop fucking From the Shadows, you hit them with the Bolt Lash, you throw the stickies. Guess what? Those stickies are going everywhere, and they're killing a whole bunch of... I'll let you try it for yourself. This is the cornerstone of the build. We've got lightning damage on it because we're running Soaked, and of course it's Stabbo. There also is, I do believe, a Frost Stabbo Primordial. Yep, there's a Frost Stabbo Primordial here. So this is just a really good thing for you to have. So that really leaves us with the Ragnarok left to talk about. Now, I'm not going to say I saved the best for last, but this is an interesting thing. Now, we really did sort of try to fit the motif for this build. First and foremost, we love Echo. Echo is great. But also, with the Ragnarok, when you melee, you can proc stickies. And as you've already noticed with the rest of this build, stickies are kind of a part of the motif. So using the Ragnarok really helps us to stick with the theme of the build. Alright dudes, so that's going to cover it for our Nerf Bait video. Thank you so much for hanging out to the end. Much love to all of you. Keep spreading positivity, kindness, and love around the community. If you want to hang out with us again, please do not hesitate to check us out, www.twitch.tv/H4XCZHD. You can also catch me on Discord, Twitter, TikTok, all the socials, doesn't really matter. But it's been a pleasure sharing this build with you. I wish you all nothing but the best. I hope to see you the next time we're live. And until then, keep being awesome. Fair naps. Peace.